This is the Unfinished Relationship Podcast.
Hi, and welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about myths. Two myths in particular: inheritance and also 50-50 custody and maintenance. So, and I'm talking from personal experience here. Right, let's deal with inheritance. So, as I've mentioned before, if I haven't, let me swing back. Divorce is divided into three parts: the divorce certificate itself being annulled, the financial separation, and then, of course, custody of the children. Now, as part of the financial separation, the question of inheritance always comes up. And within the general population, there is this myth that, inheritance is untouchable, the divorcee cannot get it. That's not true. That's not true. And you need to do your homework. I mean, getting divorced, whether you're the one who initiated it or you're the recipient of the divorce request, is not a trivial matter. And this issue of inheritance is quite important. In the UK, and I can only speak for the UK because that's the system I went through. In the UK, what you will find is that inherited property can become part of the marital property if you've been married for a significant period of time. I believe it's somewhere between 8 to 10 years. You can always go and check this yourself. Anything I tell you on here, my advice, please go and check them. I am not the font of all knowledge. I'm merely giving you the warning signs of things to look out for. In my case, my former spouse decided that she was going to take a shot at familial inheritance. And because we'd been married for a long time, it almost went her way. But likewise, I could also bring her own situation onto the table. Since she had brought mine, I was like, nope, it's not going to go all your way. Let's talk about yours. Not pretty, very messy. She had no right to do what she did, but she did it anyway. The fact of the matter is, when you're in that financial hearing, these are the things that they come up with what they call a capital valuation. And your capital valuation takes into account assets you bought prior to the marriage, assets you bought during the marriage, and assets you inherited, especially if your marriage has been going for a significant period of time. Also, you can also throw into that pile your pensions. Pensions are also considered as well. And then what the judge will look at is a thing they call as needs. Needs. They'll look at a needs. What is the need of the other party? And this is where it gets tricky and it can get messy. And in my case, I got a horrible judge who, in my opinion, she was a feminista. She was trying to get some kind of equivalency. But the challenge she had was that a lot of the inherited assets, I only owned a portion. Other people were also involved in those assets, you see. So how do you divide up a property, which is between 5, 6, 8, 10 people? How do you do that? Doesn't make sense. But the end result was that they then looked at my pension, and there was a comparison between my pension and her pension, even though the fact they're not interested in whether, in my case in particular, they're not interested in the fact that she decided she didn't want to go back to work, despite me saying to her, look, the kids are grown up. It's time for you to go to work, or at least part-time go to work. Do something for yourself. She was not interested. But all of a sudden, my pension is suddenly looking very juicy. So be on the lookout as regards things like pensions and so on and so forth. Because those kind of things, they'll go for them. And they'll try and split them in half, or they'll try and take a percentage. It just depends on how big a pension pot you have, And of course, everything I'm saying on these recordings is for the average person, not the the millionaire type person. If you got a telephone numbers, bank account, I can't really speak to that. I'm just talking to the ordinary Joe. More white collar than blue collar, but still, it applies. Just be careful. Inherited properties will come under your capital valuation. If you have properties overseas or assets overseas, to be more precise, the court can make a ruling. Enforceability is another question, which I can't speak to, but the court can make a ruling on assets overseas, and it's up to that external jurisdiction to decide whether or not they'll accept that ruling, right? So that's myth number one. So beware. Inheritance. Just because you inherited something, don't think it's off limits in the divorce court, right? Number two is the issue of when you divorce and you have to pay child maintenance. In the UK, they call in the US they may call it child support or whatever, but in the UK we call it maintenance payments for your children. Now, the law, there are laws under the Children's Act of 1991. There are certain positions that can be taken. If you get the myth that normally circulates is that if you have 50-50 custody, you don't have to pay anything. That's not entirely true. And it's something which, again, you need to investigate, you need to read up, you need to try and understand exactly what's on the table. My approach has been very much not to volunteer information to the child maintenance people, but rather to ask questions, especially when they want exact figures. My partner has decided, or rather my former partner, my former partner has decided that she wants to try and live a life of leisure. And I'm not prepared to pay for that. I have my children 50-50, pretty much, or as close to 50-50 as you can with school and holidays and all of that. Tried to get to as close to 50-50. And therefore, at the moment, I'm currently engaged with child maintenance in order to reduce my liabilities, as it were, because my children and them, when they're in my house, I will pay for their clothes, I'll pay for their food, I'll pay for everything. When they're in their mother's house, she should deal with it. But the law is not quite written like that. And the law is blind to the gender, but let us be honest. 8 out of 10 times, the mother's the one that's going to get the children. And how she spends that money is not monitored, it's not tracked in any way, shape, or form. So just be aware that when it comes to things like child maintenance, just because you have 50-50, it's not a done deal automatic thing. And the reasons for that are very nuanced. Child maintenance are not, they're not user-friendly, and there is no sympathy. The fact that you have debts is irrelevant. All they care about is what is your bottom line, how much are you earning. The fact that I'm earning less than my liabilities doesn't matter to them. So, everybody, and as a result of that behavior, everybody tries to find a way not to pay, especially when you've come out of a bitter divorce with lots of incurred a lot of cost, which now has to be paid down, and somebody's demanding money, yet at the same time, you're buying clothes for the children, you're making sure that they're fed and watered, and they get at least they can try and have at least a decent childhood when they're with you. That's the most important thing. So just be aware of that. Anyway, Children's Act 1991. You can Google it. I will put the link in the description, and hopefully for those of you out there, you will make sure that you do your homework. Do your homework. There is no getting around it. Do your homework. You don't necessarily need a lawyer for these two things, but you do need to understand what the implications are. Because I was already almost 2 years in before I finally began to understand these things. And even though the solicitors were saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Once you get 50-50 custody, it all goes away." It doesn't. Or maybe I just got the wrong kind of officer. Just, oh, it's inherited property. It's not going to be taken into account. Oh, it was. So just be cognizant of that point. Anyway, thank you very much. Stay well. Good luck.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.